Hello, I am Chef Joe Robbins. I am executive chef up at Milo, Maine, and I grew up in Penobscot Nation in Old Town, Maine. Today we are cooking with Shagbark hickory. We're going to make a glaze with it to glaze our pork. We're also going to pair that with a wild rice and a pinto bean. Object of this dish is to extract flavor from bark, because obviously you can't eat bark. For ingredients, you're going to need water for adjustments on your rice and possibly your beans, depending on how fast they cook. Vegetable oil for fat and butter as well for fat. 1 can of pinto beans, a couple tablespoons of your favorite taco seasoning, 1 can of vegetable soup, a cup and a half of rice, some shagbark foraged locally, at least a hefty amount of apple juice. You can make this in a big batch and use it later for other implements. Like you could use it in a dessert, you could use it in multiple different facets. It's just a basic glaze and it goes well on many things. And then lastly, pork, where you can either get it sliced already or you can slice it yourself as a whole pork loin. Today we're using wild rice. I prefer wild rice over basically any rice. It's got a blend in this particular one, so you have multiple different types of textures that will pick up more notes of all the things we're adding to it better than just a straight white grain or brown rice. So to start off with your glaze, get some apple juice into a nice medium pan. And this will reduce down by quite a bit. It'll start to bubble. Like I said, you want to use smaller pieces of bark so it's not overhanging and catching on fire. If it does, it's not too big a deal. Just you can actually put it right back in the apple juice because you will be straining this later. So any ash or any pieces that might fall off from this isn't going to affect the flavor or anything. But get a good healthy amount and just let that cook. I picked Shagbark hickory today because it works extremely well with something acidic like an apple juice. It has some earthy tones to balance out the sweetness of apple juice. And I think it goes really well with pork. Pork does have somewhat of a natural bland flavor, so bringing in things like a earthy bark or cedar or any of those real good woodsy tones go well with pork. That's why barbecue goes so well with pork. But for the wild rice, you want to get your stock pot pretty warm. Get some oil in there, a fair amount of oil, what seems like maybe too much, only because this technique is much like risotto. We're basically getting the oil to a point where it's going to shimmer but not smoke. And we're going to get all of that wild rice in there at once. And the temptation for this is going to be to constantly stir it, which at first you're going to want to get every little bit coated, but I guarantee you nothing in this will ever burn and it won't stick. This technique is just basically getting every single kernel coated and making sure that the rice becomes very fragrant before we add any liquid. There's a temptation there to put liquid in, just don't. But we're really trying to get each kernel to be kind of translucent, maybe even a few that are almost crispy. So just literally give it its time. There's no point in rushing it. And as you can see, it's still nothing sticking. Once I believe that every kernel is coated, get right in the center there. Stir in all that liquid. And just let that cook. Stir it occasionally just to make sure it's doing its thing. This might come up to a boil at a certain point. At that point, that's when we want to add more liquid and continue to add liquid until we're happy with the texture of the rice. There's no real measurement that has to go in here. It's just a lot of self-preference in how we treat that rice. No reason to cover it. Like I said, it's still not sticking. At this point, if you see anything starting to, seeing that liquid reduce, that's when you kind of give it a mix and use more water. And basically what I do is I just get to a point where I feel like all that rice is then submerged again, and it's going to do the same thing right over again. It's going to cook itself down, it's going to hydrate, and it's going to infuse all these flavors that are in the soup and all the seasonings in the soup. Another part of this is you don't have to season it. That soup itself already has quite a bit of sodium in it, and it just doesn't need it much more than what you're giving it. We're also going to be doing the pinto beans with it that are going to have a fair amount of seasoning and a fair amount of salt, so nothing in this dish should taste bland at all. So you want to get your butter in. Make sure you don't burn your butter. You can even take it off the heat a little bit. Get your taco seasoning in there. So basically what you're doing is you're toasting off all that seasoning and you're taking out that rawness that you can get sometimes with taco seasoning. Letting that butter foam and take on all the flavor. Low heat, and you can just let that simmer at this point. Double check on your rice, make sure that's not doing anything funky on you. Get some more water in. Could also use vegetable stock or chicken stock if that's what you prefer, but in this particular recipe we've used that vegetable soup and don't really need the extra sugar or extra flavor because that wild rice is going to have a lot of flavor already. Keep stirring. Got to that frothy point. Now I'm going to add strained pinto beans. Do that. Because they're canned, they're already cooked. There's no reason to soak them. There's no reason to give them any more heat than just heating them through to at their desired temperature. So at this point, you can just let these beans cook off to the side. They don't really need a lot of attention. You might want to, just like the rice, as you watch them cook, add a little more water because they will hydrate with all that seasoning. And as it cooks, you are cooking off water. So you're going to have to replace that water at some point. But I like to get it to about there and just let, until it comes to a simmer, not much more is needed there. So our rice, like I said, it's still not sticking, still doing its job. At this point, you can actually reduce the heat on that by quite a bit. Add more water. And for the rest of the cook time, it's actually going to basically steam and hydrate itself. And now you absolutely don't have to worry about it sticking because all the rice has decided that it's not going to stick. For our next portion, this is where we start to get the pork chops going. So my flat bottom saute pan, get some oil in. I like to cook with my hands a lot only because you can feel what's happening with the meat. You can feel anything that you might need to break down, especially pork in general has these different areas of fat right on it. So a lot of times, like we slice these pork chops, you have this sinew of fat that separates, you know, the loin from that rib meat. So you just kind of want to break that up, and all that fat will be able to render a lot easier if it's broken up and exposed to that hot oil and seasonings that we're going to use. So once you got one that you really like, I kind of like to sear the edge pieces first and kind of bring that fat all the way through. A lot of times there's a bigger fat cap than this, but by doing this, you're actually kind of making the pan non-stick a little bit because it's already got some fat. And then you can kind of go in and sear and really put that down pressure on it to get it. And this is the point where I'd like to season it with both salt and pepper. Get that really going to high heat. While that's cooking and really getting its good heavy sear on it, just stir the rice again, see where we're at. I'd say it's got about 2 to 3 more minutes of cook time there. Also give the beans a nice little survey as well. And as those cook, you might want to up the heat just a little bit, but they will thicken by quite a bit. For the pork, like I said, just kind of looking for that golden color on one side. The neat thing with pork is you can peek a little bit, kind of just tilt it up, see if you're getting that brown color at all. Once you're happy with it, that's when I go in with a flip. So whenever I flip pork chops, especially ones that are being cooked in fat, I'll tip away from me and then flip to the opposite side. Get that beautiful color and then bring your oil right back in. And that's going to ensure that this does not stick. And it really accepts all that oil that we're cooking down and giving it flavor with. Our rice is about there, nice and tender, very well hydrated. And that can just stick off the side. That'll hold itself warm for quite some time. You see all that steam coming right off from it. That'll be good while our pork cooks. And our pork is at about the point we'd want it to be, just before we throw it in the oven. Now the glaze is done, so it's time to pull out our bark and strain all that good liquid. Don't have to get too picky with it because the mesh strainer will do most of the work for you. Now that the bark's out, you can go ahead and strain your glaze right through it and make sure you get every bit of liquid out. Nice, thick, luscious. No point in wasting any of that because it stays good for a very long time in the fridge, up to a week. And that's your glaze. So at this point in the cooking process of your pork, you can get that glaze right on there. It's not going in the oven for too long, so give it just a little extra. The more you give it, the longer it would take to burn. But again, it's only going to be in there for 2 or 3 minutes just to finish through on the cooking. So at this point, our pork's ready, our beans are ready, our rice is ready. We're ready to plate it all up. I kind of plate it somewhat like you would get like a burrito bowl or any of those things, but feel free to separate it. But I like to kind of put it all together, make all these flavors work as one, because you do have a little bit of heat with the beans and you have a lot of sweetness with the pork. So you really want the rice to take on all those juices, all those flavors that we've put a lot of work into getting. So I'm going to start with rice. A nice heap on there. Come over with your beans. Give yourself a very healthy portion there. Then, star of the show, pork chop. Make sure you don't waste any of that juice. There you go. There's the Shagbark Hickory-Glazed pork with wild rice and pinto beans. Thanks for watching.